Hi, folks. It's April, and you know what that means. 420 is right around the corner, and you know what that means. It means that SunsetLakeCBD.com is having their annual 420 sale. Yes, it started yesterday, and it goes until April 22nd. And last year, thanks to Majority Report listeners, Sunset Lake CBD and the Majority Report helped raise $22,000 for the Last Prisoner Project, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to cannabis criminal justice reform. And we're doing it again. Starting today, everything at Sunset Lake, or I should say yesterday, everything at SunsetLakeCBD.com is 30% off. 30% off. That's almost 1/3 for those of you who don't do math well. And all you got to do is use coupon code 420. And if your order is over $100, they'll throw in a free 20-count jar of their Vibe gummies. That's the one with CBD and THC. That means that all of their tinctures are on sale, especially my favorite, the Good Night Oil, which has some CBD and some other stuff on there, but it helps me sleep. They also means that all of their gummies are on sale. One's like their Focus gummy that has cordyceps and lion's mane, or the one with melatonin, or the one with 2 different types of CBD. Also on the program today, excuse me.
Someone likes the CBD sale.
Exactly.
You forgot ashwagandha.
They got ashwagandha. They have smokables and pre-rolls and keef. They have fudge and coffee with CBD. Check it out. All of their products are third-party tested. They use great farming practices, integrated pest management, and they use no pesticides. They're huge movement partners. They've given thousands of dollars, not just to things like the Last Prisoner Project, but also immigration, refugee resettlement, and strike funds, and food pantries. Planned Parenthood. And right now, Sunset Lake is going to donate 4.20% of the proceeds from this sale to the Last Prisoner Project, and we, the Majority Report, are going to match that donation. Again, last year it was $22,000. Sunset Lake's 420 sale ends April 22nd. Head over to SunsetLakeCBD.com right now to take advantage of this deal and help raise money for cannabis criminal justice reform. See their website for sale terms and restrictions. And now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Netanyahu says there's a date for an assault on Rafah. Meanwhile, the U.S. pushes a new ceasefire deal in peace talks taking place in Egypt. The UN Security Council is to take up the Palestinian application for full membership. In Washington, Senate Republicans are poised to kill the House bipartisan tax deal, including the child tax credit. We've got more details on Biden's student loan debt relief program, the EPA to limit cancer-causing pollution from chemical plants. March is the 10th straight month to be hottest on record. This as Europe's top court finds protection from climate change is a governmental obligation. Trump has denied a delay in his criminal hush money case. and serious questions over his bond bid in his civil fraud case. Mayor Adams has closed New York libraries on the weekend, but at least we get to pay for his ultra-expensive lawyer in his sexual harassment case.
Oh, this isn't even the Turkish corruption one.
That's right.
It's good to know.
That's why these lawyers are so expensive. They've got to juggle a lot of balls. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the program, folks. It is
Newsday Tuesday. It's Newsday Tuesday, folks. How you doing today, Sam?
I'm doing fine. I know that we our app went out and said we're talking about Apple, but
we switched.
We switched it up. Okay, all right. So there it is, folks. We're going to do Newsday Tuesday today. We have some guests in the
Yes, I have
studio.
some family here. My dad and sister are here in studio today to watch us.
There you go.
Say hello.
Emma's asked to get them water about 8 times.
I just don't know what to do with my hands.
We got a lot of stuff to get to, and so we'll get on it. But you didn't watch the whole game last night. So,
I didn't actually. I didn't. I as I said, I was more invested in the women's tournament this year, honestly, than the men's. But you know. I've talked a little bit about my allergy to college sports. Until these guys are getting paid or these women are getting paid, it's just difficult for me to invest my full heart into it. But good game, UConn, repeat champions. Congrats to them.
There you go.
I mean, not yet. Yeah, UConn, repeat champions.
All right, let's get to the student debt stuff. There's plenty here to like, and it would be nice if it was a little bit more expansive. This is really the second big bid that the Biden administration. There was another tranche of about 4 million people that were already eligible for a student debt program, and basically the education department just made it more efficient. So those people are going to get paid out. Basically, just paying them if you're eligible. There's 2 different ways of doing it. There, you can say apply, go through this process, and hope that the people who know that they're eligible know enough to apply. Or you can just give people student debt relief, and they just suddenly get a letter saying you no longer owe that debt. That's what happened with that last tranche of about 4 million people. This one is different. This is an attempt to be more expansive. This is sort of plan B-ish or C-ish after the Supreme Court shot down in 2022 the attempt by the Biden administration to offer $10,000 per person, $20,000 if you had a Pell Grant under the auspices of the HERO Act. This one is under the National Education Act.
And this is what advocates were saying, the authority that he should probably use going into it. Now, would it have necessarily made a difference with the Supreme Court because they reached their conclusion based on the politics of the situation? Probably not. But this is maybe more durable, some student debt experts feel. Yeah,
we'll see. That is an issue. Well, let's hear him say, and then we'll critique, because one of the critiques from activists is maybe instead of announcing it, and announcing that you're about to announce it without the full details, just do it. And then let the Republicans gear up to try and sue. But it's an election year, so this is what Biden did at an event in Madison, Wisconsin.
Today, I'm proud to announce 5 major actions to continue to relieve student debt for more than 30 million Americans. First, my administration will propose a new rule to cancel up to $20,000 in runaway interest for any borrower who owes more now than when they started paying the loan. And for low and middle class families enrolled in my SAVE program, we'll cancel all of your interest, all of your interest. Second, we plan to cancel student debt for borrowers who still owe student loans even though they started repaying them more than 2 decades ago. Third, we plan to cancel debt for about 2 million borrowers who would be eligible for debt forgiveness through the SAVE program, public service loan forgiveness, or other debt canceling programs, but are not enrolled in these programs. Fourth, we plan to cancel debt for borrowers who the Department of Education determines were cheated by universities that left students with unaffordable loans and delivered little in benefits to students. And finally, the Department of Education will propose a new rule to cancel student debt for Americans facing financial hardships. And over the coming months, the Department of Education will propose and then implement these plans. And starting this fall, we plan to deliver up to $20,000 in interest relief to over 20 million borrowers and full forgiveness for millions more.
He seems really energized about that. But nevertheless, the money is still good. Let's go back over what he was talking about. Just a reminder, there's 43 million people with student debt in this country. What is it now? 1.5 trillion?
1.7 trillion.
$1.7 trillion worth of student debt. And in many instances, the interest is actually greater than the principal. Again, this is student debt that the U.S. government holds. So we're making money off of higher education, essentially. The first one with the runaway interest, that's 25 million borrowers. 25 million more. 25 million of the 43 owe more than they originally borrowed in federal student loans because of interest charges. And which is sort of astonishing.
Right.
They of those borrowers will get up to $20,000 of unpaid interest on their debt forgiven. So it's really just a function of how much of that interest is, and you'll be back stuck at the principal. That is regardless of your income. The low and middle income borrowers could have the entire interest balance that is accrued on their federal debt loan since they entered repayment canceled. In other words, that there would actually be, you would get credit for interest that you would have already paid for on the loan. If you are in the saving on a valuable education plan, or the so-called SAVE plan, it would be automatic. You don't even have to apply. You'll just get it waived, and you'll get a letter in the mail that says that's what happened. And that is also for that program, the SAVE, or any other income-driven repayment plans that you have not applied for. On top of which, if you started repayment 20 years ago, if you've had your loan for 20 years, that would get, those would be forgiven.
That was more in keeping with some of the other initial kind of cancellations, which were not helpful for his lower numbers with young people, because
that was the original 4 million, the earlier one.
By definition, if you have to have been repaying your loans for 20 years or to be eligible, then that's always going to trend to older people.
Borrowers who enrolled in programs at colleges who lost federal funding because they cheated or defrauded students would have all of their debts waived, but that is an existing program.
Yeah.
The Department of Education has been doing that for a while now. I think it started under the Obama administration, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that would, maybe they're loosening the standards for what constitutes that. If you are, and the last one is, if you're having a hardship in paying back your loans, maybe because of medical or childcare costs, it's unclear like exactly what the parameters would be for that. But you're talking about 30 million borrowers who will save some amount of money. And again, we don't know the full details on this, and it's got to go, they've got to write it up and put it into the Federal Register, and then there's going to be a comment, multiple month-long comment period. And there are some activists who are basically saying, like, maybe you just do it.
But this was also the problem with the initial cancellation too, right? Where he had an announcement that they were going to look into the authority for a few months, which allowed the Republicans to mount that legal challenge, which ended up being successful. People were saying, just announce it and then and do the cancellation, as opposed to giving the opportunity for some of the.
The problem is that there is the only thing that I'm not fully clear on in terms of this advice from activists is that it is on its face, if you do not allow for the comment period, on its face problematic, no matter what the rule is. And so, there were plenty of things I think in the Trump administration that could roll back because of it. Now, I don't know how you claw back that money, or maybe the court says, well, you've already done it and these people have relied on that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that works. But at the very least, you could start the process and make it quiet and hope that people don't notice, which it's conceivable for a while they wouldn't. So I don't know. We will follow this and talk to some activists about it after the fact. But and maybe they want to try and time this so that it comes out during the right before the election. A nice little bonus for people, maybe drive people out. But we'll see. As Caribbean Doc says, I welcome Genocide's Joe's attempt to buy my vote. In fact, this is good politics, and all politicians should be trying to buy our votes more frequently instead of trying to buy the votes of large corporations. I actually fully endorse that comment.
Yeah. I don't like the framing of, that's what basically the Republicans are saying about student debt relief, right? Where it's that you're trying to buy people's votes, aka give them material gains so that they feel like the Democratic Party actually represents their interests, as opposed to just, say a tax break for corporations. Trump, are you trying to buy their vote?
Literally,
of course.
Trump literally just said, yeah, those tax cuts. I got you on those again.
2 billionaires. We'll talk a little bit about the fallout from Donald Trump's, new abortion proclamation that he now is in favor of statewide abortion bans, if that's what they want to do. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, a couple of words from our sponsor. Have you ever heard of data brokers? Have you?
I have.
All right. You know what they are? They're middlemen. They collect all of your digital, or they collect and sell all of your digital footprints that you leave online. They can stitch together detailed profiles, which include your browsing history, your online searches, and your location data. The data broker then sells your profile to a company who delivers you a really targeted ad. Or maybe they, sell it to private equity, so they figure out where they should be putting a pet store or something like that. Well, you may not think it's a big deal, but you might be surprised to learn that these same data brokers are also selling your information to the Department of Homeland Security and the IRS. That's one of the ways that they get around, particularly some of those agencies in the Department of Homeland Security. They get around restrictions on what they can collect. They can't collect it, but they can buy it. To protect yourself against big tech's prying eyes, I use ExpressVPN. I also use it, let's be honest, so that I can spoof that I'm in a different country and watch TV shows from a different place.
Or some of your Boston teams.
Yes, that may happen.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically speaking. I want to thank ExpressVPN for supporting the Majority Report, and I want to thank them for allowing me to see some out-of-market games. Visit expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months off on a 1-year package. That's 15 months for 1 year's worth of payment. One of the easiest ways for brokers to aggregate the data and tie it back to you is through your device's unique IP address, which also obviously reveals information about your location. I've talked about that. Sometimes when we get nasty emails from people, they don't realize that if you just look at the source code in the email, you can find out where the IP address is, and then you can freak them out by saying, I've never been to wherever that town is.
Hypothetically,
something I would do.
Yeah.
But if they use the VPN, then maybe they're laughing at me about it.
Yeah.
ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of network traffic, which keeps your data safe from hackers on public Wi-Fi. That's why I have the ExpressVPN downloaded on all my devices, phone, computer, and even my home Wi-Fi router. All I do is tap one button to turn it on, and I'm protected. It's that easy. That's what the really amazing thing about all of this is. It sounds far more complicated, and if it was far more complicated, I'm not sure I would even do it. But you literally get the app, put it on your phone, press the button, and boom. Make sure your online activity and data is protected with the best VPN money can buy. Visit expressvpn.com/majority right now, and you will get 3 extra months through our special link. That's ExpressVPN, expressvpn.com/majority, expressvpn.com/majority to learn more. Also, we've talked about this product for years, and I've been taking it now for over a year. You don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. No drugs, no compromises, just better hair. It also works for women too. We both know examples of people, of women who have used it and it helped. And I can tell you from my experience, I've mentioned this a million times, but they wanted to advertise with us years and years ago. I asked Michael if he was interested in it because Michael was a little thin on top, and he wasn't. I started trying it like about a year or two ago because I'm getting up there and I'm feeling a little thinning on this side for some reason.
Yeah.
But I don't want to take drugs for it. And so it was a Nutrafol. Their hair growth supplements are physician formulated. Again, they use 100% drug-free ingredients. Their patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sex life, or in my instance, mine. Many supplements rely on ingredient studies. Nutrafol clinically tests the final formulations to ensure their efficacy. So if there's 5 things in there, they don't rely on 5 different studies on these things. Basically, they test the combination. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol's men hair growth supplements. Head over to Nutrafol.com/men. Take their hair wellness quiz. It will give you a personalized hair health plan based on your specific root causes. See what I did there?
There we go. Pun intended.
Yep. With Nutrafol, building a hair growth routine is simple. You purchase online. No prescription is necessary. No doctor's visit is necessary. They ship it to you for free, and automated deliveries ensure you'll never miss a day. You will see results, 84% of you, in 3 to 6 months. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men. Enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men. Enter the promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code TMR. We will put the links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions, as well as at majority.fm. And just a reminder, you can get the show commercial free, the free half, free of commercials, by becoming a member at jointhemajority.report.com. So Donald Trump yesterday came out with his much-awaited, I guess, statement on abortion.
Right.
And basically, he had changed his position. What was it, like a month ago?
Yeah.
Do we have that clip? Play this clip.
He had his, I guess
Okay,
this
here it
was,
is.
right. I don't know if he had announced this, but there was reporting that he had been floating a 16-week ban to work with some of the conservatives that he needs, to galvanize to win in the fall. Apparently,
this heartfelt, position he had waned as soon as he found out that that trial balloon wasn't going to be good, because he is a member of the Republican Party, and the constituency that will elect you to office in the Republican Party wants to ban abortions, or at least the most active members of that constituency. Let's just go back. Let's take a walk down memory lane. Here is Laura Ingraham. This is in December of 2022, talking about the benefit of overturning Roe v. Wade. This and she's looking back on that Dobbs decision, and this is in the wake of the 22 elections, which didn't work
Wasn't
for
a red
Republicans.
wave like predicted?
Was not a red wave, but she is steadfast because she knows who her audience is, and here she is.
And marching by those in the pro-life community, also with the selection of all these terrific justices, it made the reversal of Roe possible. And regardless of the political benefit, which is impossible really to quantify, it was a win nearly 50 years in the making.
Now, just a couple of points. One, she talks about 50 years in the making because this is the first time ever the Supreme Court has reversed and taken away an individual right that had been established in our society for 50 years. And impossible to measure the political benefit. Here she is in a little bit less than a year later, in August of 2023.
Overturning Roe versus Wade is the greatest accomplishment the conservative movement has had since the end of the Cold War. We should be proud of it and build on it, not run away from it.
That's right. You do not run away from something like that, because we should be proud of it and build on it. And of course, here she is yesterday attempting to assuage conservatives and Republicans over Donald Trump's less than full-throated commitment to banning abortion nationwide. He only came out for bans in states.
Oh, Byron, Republicans fought for 50 years to get Roe overturned, and courtesy of Trump, they finally succeeded. But didn't he do the only thing really he could do at this point without committing political suicide and ensuring that more pro-abortion activists get nominated to the federal courts? Oh.
All right.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically, and Rush Limbaugh did this quite a bit when he was alive and lying. And that was basically say they are doing this just for political reasons. And you got to allow them because you know what their agenda is. And this is the first sort of like, I think, one of the most honest things she's ever said. The American public does not want abortion bans anywhere in this country. And she knows that's an untenable position. But she also knows that when Donald Trump gets into office, he will deliver on the rest of the order from the right-wing Republicans.
That's what Mike Pence was so excited about, to serve under Donald Trump, right? He figured that he could be the perfect vessel to lie for the Lord, because that's what the entire effort to claw back abortion rights has centered around: lying until you have the opportunity to strike. Lying and saying that, we're gonna leave it to the states, and then Lindsey Graham, who we'll talk about in a second, within, a few months or weeks after Dobbs, came out with his own concept of a 15, 16-week federal abortion ban. They lie to get elected, and then they act to reward the evangelical base that got them there. And that's what the Donald Trump presidency would be. He would have immense pressure, even though I don't know if he could get past the filibuster, but he could do some things on the executive action front that could severely curtail say, like, the ability of abortion clinics to operate, right? I mean, the brakes are off now that Dobbs has been implemented.
And the idea that the Republicans wouldn't get rid of the filibuster, I mean, frankly, I want the Democrats to get rid of the filibuster.
Right.
And, but you invariably have Democrats who sell themselves as being, not even mavericks, like literally running against the Democratic Party, like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. And we'll have new ones. Maybe it'll be Fetterman. Who knows, the next person, the next Democrat who will come out and say, well, we can't, I'm too much of an institutionalist. That does not happen in the Republican Party.
And if they were to get rid of the filibuster on abortion, and then there's those narrow margins, some of those frontline Republicans in blue or purple states are going to be put in a different position than they would be politically if there were that filibuster protection for them.
Well, the problem is there's not that many of those Republicans in those blue or purple states anymore. And so the idea that a Republican would vote against getting rid of the filibuster to impose an abortion ban, show me that Republican who would not know that vote will destroy their chances in their upcoming primary. The Republican base wants an abortion ban federally. Period. End of story. That base may only be 30% of the American public, but they control that party. And there is no way any Republican anywhere, I don't know what state it would be or who it would be, that would stand in the way of that vote. And so there will be no filibuster, at least for that question, if the Republicans control the House and the Senate and the presidency. And Donald Trump has absolutely no incentive whatsoever to veto an abortion ban. And if he wanted to say that, he would have said it in his he would have said it yesterday. It's one thing to say I prefer it to be a state's issue before you get elected. It's another to say I'm going to veto it. In the meantime, here is the Biden campaign releasing their ad. This ad came out yesterday. You may have heard this story. I think we may have talked about this. And this is one of the implications of abortion bans where there is supposedly an exception. But remember, there is no light that goes off on the top of a person's head when their life is in jeopardy unless they get an abortion. That doesn't happen. Every time that decision is made, it is a doctor's subjective opinion as to whether this constitutes a life-threatening situation.
Or rape and incest exemptions, for example, that would have to be borne out in the courts, which makes them essentially null and void, because
Right.
you'd have to prove a rape or you'd have
From
to
a
prove
practical
incest.
standpoint.
From a practical standpoint, then the abortion can't go forward.
The point with a doctor having to make a subjective decision is that if their subjective decision after the fact is determined to be wrong, then they could go to jail. And so what doctors do is they say, I'm going to err on the side of me not going to jail,
Right.
me not losing my license, and wait until there is some indisputable indication that your life is in jeopardy or your ability to get pregnant again. That's not even an exception. That's this story here.
This is one of our willow boxes. This is just filled with some of the things that we had started gathering for her while I was pregnant.
Yep.
Here's her little baby book. This is the outfit that she was gonna maybe wear home from the hospital. All of these. This is...
Pause it. I should say that there's graphics that are coming up if you're just listening to this that say that in 2022, Donald Trump killed Roe v. Wade. And this is a function of that.
The blanket that she was in.
3 days later, Amanda was in the ICU with sepsis. She almost died twice. Doctors wouldn't give her an abortion.
Her little footprints.
The infection caused so much damage, Amanda may never get pregnant again.
It's okay.
Trump did this.
I'm Joe Biden.
It's a
This message, there you go.
pretty brutal ad. It's geared towards, I guess, Republicans who would who are in favor of some form of abortion rights. I'll be Laura Ingraham here and say I wish that it was the Biden administration pointed out that it's actually been a dream of Republicans for a long time, and it's Mitch McConnell who specifically held open that seat that Merrick Garland, and by not even giving Merrick Garland a hearing, as a way of driving anti-abortion voters to the polls effectively.
Or was it mega MAGA trickle down or MAGA extremists or whatever they've poll tested for 3 years instead of just saying the word Republican?
Yes. And, but I'll do my best, Laura Ingraham, say like, well, this is geared towards beating Donald Trump. And that's going to be at least the short-term implications of that will be the same. But let's be clear. This has been one of the primary drivers of Republican politics for 45 years.
Yeah. Really since Jim Crow, since after Jim Crow, this is what they turned to appeal to
this was the next, base. Yes. Yeah. This was, and this is what has driven voters out to the polls for a long time. The problem that they have is that they've caught the car, and people now believe that Republicans are actually doing this, not just sort of like dangling in front of their voters. And
because they did it.
Exactly.
I mean, and you have Trump coming out and saying that Democrats want to execute the baby after it comes out of the womb. I mean, this sounds completely nonsensical. We know that the 90% of abortions are in the first trimester. Nearly 99% are performed in the first 20 weeks. The doctor's subjectivity that you speak about is necessary because that's when we're talking about that 1% there, which is life of the mother when those later term abortions happen. That's why these bans have such a chilling effect, because it literally affects women like that from their ability and people who can get pregnant. Their ability to have pregnancies in the future, and also their lives are in danger if you handcuff doctors and threaten them with losing their license or going to jail from operating in the best interest of their patient.
I will cop to contemplating, executing my child, but really more closer to like when she was like in 14 or 15 years after birth.
That's a really late term abortion.
That was there's been times.
I wish you didn't say that on the air. It's going to get clipped for future Republican ads.
That, of course, is a joke.
Looking into it.
I mean, typical Brooklyn liberal.
Yeah.
Can't make jokes anymore.
Nope. No, we're completely cancel culture. But aside from that, I wouldn't, when they're younger, they're much cuter.
Yeah. It's much harder to do the abortion.
But now, of course, no, that's not the case. And I'm just saying that one specific age, just in case she's listening. Speaking of kids and how much Republicans love kids, you'll recall that during in the passage of the American Rescue Act, there was a child tax credit which paid parents of children. I can't remember exactly when the amount started to diminish, but it was up there. You could have, I think, a combined income of $140,000 and still get $300 per child per month.
And it was a payment as opposed to a, year-end tax credit to help alleviate some people in poverty.
The tax credit at the end is a payment, but this was one that was actually distributed on a monthly basis, as opposed to just coming in when you file your taxes. And it was incredibly helpful to people. In fact, it pulled about 35 to 40% of children out of poverty. We just did that. We did it. And then overnight, it ran out. We as a society didn't seem to care that much about the fact that we had solved 30 to 40% of child poverty. There was every reason to believe that a couple $100 more would have gotten rid of child poverty. We had figured it out. It wasn't a mystery. And then as a society, we decided,
Well, Joe Manchin in particular.
Joe Manchin, but, go back and look at the news. go back and look at what, people were complaining about. Nobody was even talking about that. It apparently was just not that important of an issue for our society. You didn't, it's not Jimmy Kimmel's responsibility to be talking about that, but it also would have been like, somebody should have said something to somebody.
Do these these corporate media corporations, are they staffed by people who care or actually think that maybe those people don't deserve it?
I don't know that they paid that much attention. I don't know.
Yeah,
there was a couple of places you would see it, but in the main,
I'd say they don't care or are hostile if they do.
It's hard to imagine that they cared that much, or people would have been talking about it for a long time. And, when we talk about the idea of a political economy, that's what we're talking about. These are simply decisions that our society has made. It's not one person going like, I want to do this. I want to have this, a turkey sandwich today as opposed to, tuna fish. But this is the way our society makes decisions. And our society made this decision without really anybody seeming to care. The Democrats in the House have attempted to revive the child tax credit in a much less robust form. They basically tempted the Republicans with tax cuts for corporations.
Yeah.
That's what it took. It passed in the House. It was a $78 billion tax cut package. Approximately 36, I think about 36, 30, maybe it was 39 billion for the child tax credit, and 39 billion for corporate tax breaks. It passed in January, 357 to 70. It head to the Senate, and apparently Mike Crapo of Idaho,
most
who
apt
sits
name
on
in Congress.
Yes, sits on the Senate Finance Committee, has real issues with pulling some more children out of poverty. And he stands against it. Despite the fact that it would provide these corporate tax breaks essentially on depreciation, essentially, and on R&D and interest and investment in equipment and depreciation issues. This bill, aside from providing a bonus for these corporations, of the 9 million children now back in poverty, we had millions less when we had the child tax credit, the robust version. It would lift about 500,000 of those over the poverty line, and it would make about 3 million children less poor, living in less poverty, essentially. Ultimately, that number would go up to 5 million in full effect in 2025, and lift about 600,000 children out of poverty.
Is there a sense of how they're attempting to means test it to pare it down that much?
Well, it's not paring it down so much. It's an expansion, and it actually it's not an upward bound cutoff. It's a lower bound cutoff.
Okay.
Because tax credits, you have to make some money to file those taxes, and it would basically expand the lower bound rather than go high. So it would impact 16 million children in families with low incomes. So some kids living out of poverty would actually get some child tax credits or be eligible for it. Nearly 3 million children under the age of 3 would benefit in the first year. In the first year, expansion would lift as many as 400,000 to 500,000 above the poverty line. Like I say, 3 million more would be made less poor. This is information that comes from the CP, I think it is, the CCPB. There is one hope for it, apparently, in the Senate. It seems unlikely. The fact is the Republicans don't want to give Joe Biden a win, and they think that they're going to take the Senate this November, and they can get bigger corporate tax cuts without having to do this stuff where you give kids, poor kids money. That's basically what it comes down to. Josh Hawley, remember, you need 10 Republicans to get the 60 votes. Josh Hawley, who has said that he's more or less favorably disposed towards the tax package, is floating the idea of combining in that tax bill a reauthorization of the compensation program for radiation victims, which apparently got 69 votes in the Senate last month. This RECA program will hopefully, apparently Crapo is a big fan of RECA. So this is basically, you put these two things together, and the idea is that maybe they'll get enough votes. It's unclear whether they will go through this process. Schumer may not want to bring up the bill if he thinks it's going to fail because they want to get judges through and they don't want to waste time. We'll see. But I think it's fairly safe to assume that the Republicans are going to kill this. And
Hawley wants it because of the tax cuts, or because he can basically say that he's pro-family. He's trying to do that Viktor Orban.
He's indicated that he's supportive of the child tax credit provisions in this publicly. But I think
right, but it's
hard to trust.
It's literally that kind of almost Bannonite flavor of conservative. Basically, maybe let's incentivize these heterosexual families to have a man outside the home and the woman staying at home. That's probably his vision of it as well.
Yes, and let's be clear: tax credits was an idea of Republicans. It was born. It was born, I think, maybe out of the Heritage Foundation 50 years ago, and this is this is the bare minimum. And yes, Hawley likes to pretend he's a bit of a populist, and I would also imagine that there must be some radiation victims in Kansas that is a constituency that he's trying to court. But just worth getting an update on that, being aware of there's one party that wants to alleviate child poverty somewhat. And then there's another party that absolutely does not want to alleviate child poverty. Even if they get corporate tax cuts.
Yes, more leverage for capitalists. That's exactly what they try to engender.
Want to just draw your attention to a legal case that took place in Europe, because I don't know. There was a time actually where if you attempted on the Supreme Court to mention Europe, Scalia would call you some type of freak, and it really just depends on what the utility is of any given ruling as to whether it provides any precedence. But March was found to be the 10th straight month to be the hottest on record. So we've broken 10 climate records in 10 months. We're 10 for 10.
Yep.
So that's the good news. If you if you don't really,
if you want to apply a batting average metric to
records all over the place.
Exactly. And but the
bad news is that this is going.
The bad
to be
news, that's
catastrophic.
not the record you want to break.
Right.
If you are looking for civilization to exist. And but on that day that was announced, a ruling, and I've lost my whole piece of paper on it. There was a ruling in the European EU courts. Where did that go?
Basically showing that Switzerland had not complied with its duties. Is this what you're referring to here?
Yeah, it found that essentially, that there was two cases. One was dismissed on procedural grounds, and I think even the second one may have been dismissed on procedural grounds too. But the bottom line is that the court found that there is essentially a right that citizens have to not have civilization be fundamentally destroyed and altered by climate change. And people understand the concept of these rights. If a citizen of a country has a right, then the government has an obligation to do something to ensure that that right is unencumbered. And this verdict held that Switzerland essentially has violated their citizens' rights by not providing support for against climate change. This is Europe's highest human rights court, and it sided with a group of older Swiss women against their government in a landmark ruling. The Court of Human Rights rejected, like I said, 2 other similar cases on procedural grounds. The Swiss case essentially sets a legal precedent for Europe's 46 member states to essentially work to mitigate climate change. And if they don't, it's found to be a violation of their citizens' human rights. And so essentially, what we have now is a right of action by citizens to hold their government to account. And this is a big deal. You see this in our country. If there is an environmental statute, if there's a sense that the EPA is not following their the statutory privileges, responsibilities, or the statutory, or in making a rule or in enforcing a rule, there's a right of action by citizens or that can argue that they have been directly impacted by it. The idea that in Europe you have a right, whether there is a statute or not, passed by a European country saying that you have a right to be protected from climate change. The fact that this is just a inalienable right according to this human rights court means that we're going to start seeing all sorts of actions by Europeans against their government for not doing X, Y, or Z. That X can be reasonably dropping, raising cafe standards or deploying, electric charging stations, a whole host of things. We really don't have a sense of how a big a deal this is going to end up being in practice. But in principle, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and I would love to see some sort of similar. There was that case in Montana last year. I think it's mentioned in the Associated Press article, basically saying that state agencies were violating the constitutional right to a clean environment by allowing fossil fuel development, and that is a new case, first of its kind here, as the Associated Press writes, trial in the U.S., which means that we could start to see more of this kind of action here. But of course, making something a right in this country is a bit difficult and requires some legal hurdles.
Right. The language of rights, I think, is sort of been not discredited, but devalued by this sort of thing not happening enough. But this should have, I remember being in high school learning about climate change and knowing where we are at now, I have a lot of anger at society for the lack of action. And I can't imagine, I can imagine growing up now seeing how much worse it's gotten and how much more dire it is and how Al Gore isn't selling the light bulbs that might fix it all. It's got to be really depressing for kids. So young activists bringing these sorts of lawsuits, I think is really great. And
we're having a guest on Thursday speaking about how market-based solutions to climate mitigation are, essentially completely insufficient. There needs to be just a much more much stronger hand by the state here. Europe and the EU and other European countries probably have better mechanisms to do such a thing. But in the United States, there needs to be a shift in that conversation, not just electric vehicle tax credits and investment in these projects by giving grants to certain corporations. There should be a greater federal hand in this to make the transition a lot more rapid.
All right, we've got two more stories before we head to the fun half. One is that the nomination, and this has been going on for a while, but it looks like we might be at the end of the story. The nomination of the first Muslim American to a federal appeals court judgeship seems to be essentially close to dead. A lawyer, Adil Manji, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, got through the Judiciary Committee on partisan grounds or a basis, and he is nominated to be on the Philadelphia U.S. Court of Appeals in the Third Circuit, and Republicans went at him hard because he's a Muslim, and of course. That is still embedded in their DNA as a party. In
December, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, Josh Hawley all went after him specifically on racial grounds and were questioning his condemnation of Hamas. I mean, he's not Palestinian. Asking him about the October 7th attacks, asking him about a ceasefire letter written by an organization that he was affiliated with, but that he didn't sign. They were clearly racially motivated in the way that they were going after it. And I'm extremely disappointed and shocked to see these Democrats, like in Nevada, that you'll get to in a second, who have seemingly capitulated to that pressure.
Well, Joe Manchin came out against Manji, and then, that's not... But then it was Catherine Cortez Masto who came out against his nomination, and then Jackie Rosen, who is running for re-election.
Masto just won re-election very narrowly in Nevada.
Yes. And this is, the Republicans were saying that he was anti-Semitic because, of course, he's Muslim. Even the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, when the Anti-Defamation League comes out and does not attack a Muslim person, you know that you are out on a limb. But Masto and Rosen said the anti-Semitism claims were ridiculous, but they are coming out and saying that they are objecting to his nomination because local law enforcement groups have a problem with him. He is on the advisory panel of something called the Alliance of Families for Justice, which is a support group for family members of incarcerated people that has called for the release of some individuals who were convicted of killing police officers. One of them was, I guess, apparently the organization sponsored a fellowship in the name of Kathy Boudin. She was a member of the Weather Underground. Her son was the district attorney in San Francisco. She's, I think she was released, what was it, like 5-10 years ago? I can't remember now. Not that long ago. And so the idea is that they're using this sort of front of police groups as a way of sinking this nomination. I think Masto came out first to say that she was released in 2003. She just recently passed away last year. Okay, that's what it was. Masto came out and opposed the nomination basically to give Rosen space to do that because she's running in a tough race in Nevada. You've got there's still this crime narrative that's out there, particularly in the wake of like Eric Adams pretending that this was a huge issue in New York and around the country. And I think that's what this is a residual of that. The problem is that the Biden administration doesn't want to sink the nomination of the first potential Muslim federal judge, particularly since that they've been supporting and enabling a genocide or ethnic cleansing or just the mass murder of Muslims in Palestine, in Gaza. And so that puts them in an uncomfortable position, apparently. The other issue is that if they don't pull his nomination, it will just languish there. And that court is currently, it deals with Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and the Virgin Islands in a weird twist. It is divided 7-6 in favor of Republican nominated judges, and placing a judge on that court would put it at 7-7. And the Republicans are using these courts as sort of a way in which they can, particularly now that supposedly there's going to be a little bit less forum shopping, or specific within the context of circuits. They're gonna go for circuits where there's an advantage to Republicans just to play the odds. And so this is a really important seat that needs to be filled. And I would anticipate that the Biden administration is going to pull it at one point. But this is, this is such a tiny downstream indication of just how much Biden is potentially effing up this country because of his blind support for Netanyahu, right? Like, there's we know the implications of, or we don't know, but it's not hard to assess that the implications for the election in the fall, based upon Biden's blind support of Netanyahu up to this point, is going to be unhelpful at best. I mean, you have, never mind the direct impact on votes, but the impact on people who are supposedly organizing and get out the vote campaigns and campaigning. I'm sure you've had conversations. I've certainly had conversations with people I wouldn't necessarily expect, who are like, it's horrible. It's horrible for us. And then just, this is, I don't know how many other instances are, but the fact is that, like, this guy is being shot down. The administration could just hold his nomination there, but it's not going to pass through in the Senate. And they would otherwise pull this nomination and put somebody else up there so that they could get nominated and sit on this court by the fall. But
Biden's in a quandary because of his policy for the past 6 months of embracing this far-right genocidal regime. I mean, he made some sort of calculation, and plus it's clearly ideological for him. He's openly a Zionist and has been one of the most pro-Israel Democrats his entire career. But the fact that he didn't even make the political calculation because he was so emotional about Israel is deeply frustrating because of all of the branches of electoral consequences that we're talking about right now.
All right, one last story I've been wanting to get to for a while. What you never hear about anymore is critical race theory. And that's pretty amazing because we were able as a country to get rid of it in about 6 months.
Well, we replaced it with DEI.
In every single classroom, elementary school that critical race theories was being taught in, we were able to get rid of it in 6 months. Nobody ever talks about it anymore. You know where it is? It's living right now with the caravan that was going to come take away your weekend homes up in Minnesota.
And the wokeness, right? We don't even hear that much about wokeness anymore.
Wokeness is gone, but DEI is still here, and
that's the richest version of this exact same sort of anti-black or whatever hysteria. DEI is the investor version. CRT is the bureaucratic version. Woke is the sort of popular version.
We got to go through all of those things, I guess.
But it always goes to the top because that's where the money comes from.
Yep. And of course, that's what's bringing down all those planes.
Right.
But this is like a perfect example of what critical race theory basically uncovers. Apparently, for a long time in medicine, and are people aware that I think it wasn't until 1991 that the National Institutes of Health, they did not do any studies on women's health. They did not do any studies on women's health. They just basically extrapolated from men's health. And then somebody had the bright idea in 91 to say, like, maybe just because women derived from a male rib, they may have different health issues. Apparently, there was a test, and I have some familiarity with this with the kidneys. There are measures and metrics as to how well your kidneys are performing, and there are substances in the blood that show up if your kidney is not functioning that well, like creatins, for instance. Apparently, there was a test that overestimated how well black people's kidneys were functioning. This is because there was an automated formula that calculated results for black and non-black patients differently. And what that did, there is a list of people nationwide who are on a list to get kidney donations. If you have two kidneys, you really only need one. But if your second kidney fails, at one point you got to go on dialysis. And there's a sort of an interim period where you can go and try and find a kidney. Kidneys are, like you say, you only need one. So there are kidney donations. There was an awareness, I guess, that this test sort of gave more health points to black people. And they had just a different formula. And it's unclear to me from what I've read here as to why this was the case. But it was more than likely just sort of like, racist assumptions that exist. I mean, we know from studies that black people, particularly black women, when their doctors will underprescribe painkillers to black women because they just assume that black women are they're being hysterical about the amount of pain they're in or something.
Well, I remember, we had Dr. Uche Blackstock on at the start of Black History Month to talk about this very topic, and she cited this study that sticks out to me all the time, which was one in the proceedings of the National Academies of Science, where they found that 40% of first and second year medical students believe black people's skin is thicker than white people's. So, these kinds of assumptions go very, very deep, and doctors are not priests. The medical community is not exempt from having racist assumptions.
Are priests not racist?
Well, I forgot to tell you that I'm a devout Christian.
A few years ago, the National Kidney Foundation, the American Society of Nephrology, convinced laboratories to switch to race-free equations in calculating kidney function. And then the U.S. Organ Transplant Network ordered hospitals to use only race-neutral test results in adding new patients to their kidney waiting list. And so basically it changed the order in which people were in there. But they were like, well, what about people who are already on the list, who are way down on the list because this formula essentially says that they don't need a kidney as much as these other white people who need a kidney more. And so the Transplant Network gave hospitals a year to uncover which black kidney candidates could have qualified for a new kidney sooner. And this time last year, more than about 14, the story's just coming out, 14,000 black kidney transplant candidates had their waiting times modified by an average of 2 years. Since that time, about 2,800 of them have gotten transplants. But just the existence of this, there are people who study like health equity in the same way we've had people come on to talk about equity in the law. We had, is it Professor Dorothy Brown? Is that her name? She came on and spoke about how she's a tax law professor and found that there were inequities built into our tax system because, not because, somebody at the IRS wanted to be racist, but we know how tax laws are developed is somebody proposes a law and then wealthy people come and lobby to get loopholes in that law or to reflect the structure of their lives. And black people are basically left out of that process for years and years and years. So what is considered the normal structure of how two people earn money in a family, let's say, was really only reflective of how white people earn money in this country for a long time. And the tax laws benefited white people over black people. Regardless, you could still have the same amount of income, but the way in which it was earned benefited white people. I mean, frankly, we had that with capital gains. But this was a little bit more, submerged. But there's also health equity scholars in medicine. And when we talk about critical race theory, this is what we're talking about. Finding structures of society that are racist in outcome without necessarily having to be racist in intent. And so this was fixed. But I found it, an interesting story to look at for, it's too bad people aren't talking about critical race theory anymore. But if they were, this would have been a good one to share with your uncle who's been watching a lot of Fox News.
I would like to see some uncles get presented with The Whiteness of Wealth by Dorothy Brown and see their reactions to that.
It would be a nice gift.
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
Maybe take the cover off.
Thanksgiving gift.
Folks, we're going to head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. And you also keep this show alive and thriving. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget our merch. We got our 20th anniversary merch.
Look at that.
Right now, available at shop.majority.report.com. I didn't have to take a drink, I guess, from the coffee, but I did. And there's, the Heather Gray anniversary t-shirt. I mean, the black's good too. I mean,
you're coveting that one.
Yeah.
You should be able to get an order of it.
It would be nice.
Great.
I don't know how many times I need to hint on air.
Julie.
About this. But also don't forget our Discord and justcoffee.co-op, fair trade coffee, also hot chocolate. They're a co-op. They treat their suppliers really well. 10% off with the coupon code majority. Emma, ESVN, what's happening?
On ESPN yesterday, we spoke about the South Carolina undefeated season and the bye, Dad. We saw about the undefeated season and the fact we previewed, I guess, the game that happened last night. Bradley and I both correctly predicted that UConn would win. We also talked about the Stephon Diggs trade, Caitlin Clark's impact. I think some of the politics behind that, as well as what else did we talk about? Oh, we talked a little bit about Doc Rivers and the predictable kind of slide for the Milwaukee Bucks. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt.
So this morning I was on with Rob and Jordan of the Insurgents podcast. We talked about the Clips and the border and some stuff. Go check that out. That was a fun conversation.
The Clips?
The Eclipse. Sorry.
The Eclipse.
Actually, when they said it too, like, we've had enough clips. I thought they said clips talk. I'm like, we didn't play any clips. And it's like, well, they meant Eclipse.
Eclipse.
The Eclipse. Tonight, we're talking.
What insights did you have about the Eclipse?
that I don't really care this time because in 2044 it's going to come to North Dakota and Canada. So I'll just catch it then.
I'm going to be dead probably then. No, will I?
We don't know.
20 years?
Close.
No, it's going to be kicking around. I'm coming out for that.
To North Dakota?
Yeah.
Get you up to Minot.
Yeah.
There you go. And also Anthony Fantano. I talked to him for about 45 minutes. We're going to release all of it for patrons on
the
Sunday.
Needle?
The Needle Drop, yeah.
Needle Drop.
Talked to him about Kendrick Lamar dissing J. Cole, and if I'm sort of some of the bad fans who only pays attention when there's rap beef, which is kind of what always draws me into hip hop. And I love the Kendrick Lamar diss, and Fantano kind of told me why. Maybe we don't need to be like that anymore.
I love how obsessed you've been with this and how you found a way to work it into Left Reckoning.
It's completely monopolized my life.
It's
like
incredible.
that off the future Metro Boomin
The verse
album.
that changed it all.
It's great. Or a last gasp of bygone hip hop era. Who knows? That's
that too.
Maybe what it was, but I'm enjoying it still.
All right, quick break. Fun half. We will take phone calls. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians. They're so stupid though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him!
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
654